Hello and welcome to another episode of Heart of the Artist. My name is Safiya and I am your host for this journey. And as always, I am incredibly grateful for the little team that makes this whole show possible. My wonderful videographer, Annabelle de la Forêt, and all of the amazing artists that we get to sit with and interview and receive their beauty and their creativity. So thank you for being on this journey with us and keeping an open mind to all the various forms of expression. I hope that they inspire you. Today, we will be with a good friend of mine, somebody who I've been very inspired by with his work in the world and who he is as a human in community, a beautiful pillar of bringing people together in song and prayer and playfulness. So, Zamir is a yoga educator, storyteller, poet, musician, and Dharma artist. His passion for improvisation in life and art have led him to seek a path where the gifts of creativity are expressed and shared as a way of discovering oneself. For him, life is a gift, and what you give back to it is your gift back to life. Artists play an essential role of reminding us of this. Indian by birth, Canadian by citizenship, humanitarian by outlook, and cosmic by religion, he strives to contribute to the world through the way of beauty. He is the founder of Mystic Yogi, a platform to make yogic learning beautiful, and also works as a holistic counselor to help individuals heal body and mind. With his friend and co-founder of the Patterns to Presence program, Sabrina Lakani. And here we're going to dive into an interview, a conversation with Zamir, and he'll be sharing some poetry, some stories, and his beautiful self. So thank you for being with us today. Hello, Zamir.
Hi, Safiya.
Honored to have you on the show today. And very excited to just dive into a conversation with you and hear your thoughts on how music and art can be a tool for social change and for bringing awareness to that which feels important to us, and just your own relationship to your various art forms. So without further ado, I'm curious what lies at the heart of artistry for you, and what is that pull that brings you to music, to poetry, to these different forms that you call your expression?
You know, art is life. And many years ago, I came across a term put forth by a Buddhist teacher named Chogyam Trungpa, and he called it Dharma art. And it's art as a path of true perception, of having a play and performance with life as it's unfolding around you. And as I went deeper into this, I began to see that it was so much aligned with a lot of the yogic teachings that I'd been exploring, which is how do your body and mind come into relationship with the energies that are circulating within us, and how does that then come into relationship with its environment? And I think that's so much of what an artist is doing. It's trying to understand and relate into the constellations of the ever-churning, moving energies, thoughts, emotions that we carry, and then finding a way to express it out in the world. And the thing is that we're not isolated, so the environment itself becomes an influence upon us and an inspiration to us as artists.
Yes.
You know, nature was the first great inspiration for artists, because you look out into nature and it's a beautiful art unfolding all the time. You know, and when we try to think, well, who could have created the beauty of the sunset and all the colors of the sunset, the flowing sounds of the waters and the songs of the birds, the intricacies of the flower and their fragrances? There's some great creator that maybe the source or the divine itself is a great artist, and we're all inspired because we are made from that. Aren't we not all on some level artists? Are we not all on some level creators?
Yes.
And so I feel like part of the role of the artist is to open themselves up to their unique role within this big play that we call life. And we have access to these codes of inspiration that we receive. And in that sense, a scientist could be an artist. Einstein, was he not an artist in a way? I mean, he turned mathematics into an art, almost a mystical approach to the cosmology and the science of life. As much as a musician or a dancer or a painter, we're constantly receiving these things. And I think part of the work of the artist is, how do we actually receive this and then allow it to shape us and then express through us?
Yes.
You know, as an artist, we all know what it's like to find obstacles and blocks. And we're all seeking, like, how do I get out of the way? So this thing that's coming in can actually be alchemized and expressed through me. And so for me, art became, you know, my first contact with, I think, some of the deeper states of life and the joys of all the different qualities that a human being can experience and express through music or poetry or song or dance. And for me, life and art is becoming closer and closer together.
So beautiful. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm curious with that investigation of, in a sense, like purifying oneself so as to be a clearer channel for this source, this energy, this current of life to come through us and move us and express through our bodies in whatever way our vocation or our spirit calls us to. I'm curious for you, like, what blocks come up when you feel disconnected to that sense of beauty and creativity, and how you create more space in yourself to welcome it back in.
Purity is such an interesting word, and it can be associated with sort of religious and moral overtones sometimes. And so let's think more deeply into what we mean by purification and the different ways in which it might happen. Because in some ways, alchemy on a spiritual level is a process of turning suffering into art.
Yeah.
Right?
Well
It's
said.
it's our relationship with
Yeah.
these energies might be heavy or dense, or, you know, I mean, heartbreak perhaps was one of the biggest inspirations of art for me and many artists, right?
Relatable.
You know, we all get that, right?
Yeah.
These heavy emotions of anger or jealousy or sadness, you know, and the only way to purify ourselves of them is to somehow alchemize them into some form of expression.
Yeah.
So I think art, you know, when met directly, when our experience is met directly as it is, it becomes the base material for some creative expression.
Yeah.
And that itself feels, you know, purifying to us. So I think that's one side of it. You know, on some levels, many artists kind of abhor something that is too orderly or clean. Like we you know, artists tend to be a bit chaotic or messy. Or they almost need that in order to bring
Yeah.
stimulation,
Yeah.
right? So that can be the case. But also, I think as I studied art more from an Eastern view and perspective, there is a tremendous appreciation for purity, for orderliness to be found in a way that it's found not because it's imposed on top, but because it's actually natural. When you sing a note, you know, a musician is striving for a pure note or a pure tone. And when you find that pure tone, you feel this resonance as if you've tapped into this thing that has always been there.
Yeah.
And now it is pure. Not that you made it pure. You know, you didn't wash it clean. You just arrived to the essence of a thing.
Yeah.
So I think maybe in purity, we're trying to find what is essence. What is essential?
Good question.
Right?
Yeah.
When you do a cleanse, I mean, what are we doing when we do a cleanse of our body? There's this implicit understanding that, okay, well, we have these things in us that make us feel kind of like heavy or stuck or in pain. But if we were to cleanse them out, there's already this existing natural state in us
Yeah.
that is whole and this is healed.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would we cleanse if we were not already that whole state?
Yeah.
So I think part of the journey of the artist is, how do I also return to this place of wholeness? And I think wholeness is this interesting dance for art, because we need fragmentation. We need the separation and the disconnection and all those experiences of being alienated or separate from life in order for us to undergo the journey of returning back into wholeness and expressing that. You know? I guess we're getting a bit philosophical here, but it is pragmatic, though,
Yes,
if we
yes.
approach it that way.
Yeah, yeah. And do you find for you when, let me just take a moment to really find what the question is for you. When you feel like a sense of chaos or a muddiness or a lot happening in your life, do you feel that, like, what is your process of then inviting that creativity to meet that? Is it going into a space of meditation and doing your best to presence with difficult emotions? Is it going for a walk? Is it just singing into that space of like tension in the body? I'm curious like how you meet the difficulties of life and how you personally alchemize that into some form of expression, or how you allow that expression to move you through that space.
Well, I've been fortunate, if I think about it from how I use art. I have been drawn to many artistic forms. Dance is one, poetry is another,
Yeah.
song is another. So, I'll find that I kind of move between those three.
Yeah.
There might be times where it's just through singing and singing songs that this stuff that is all clogged up in here begins to move and begins to be expressed. Or I'll begin to write, and through that writing, all that is unprocessed within me, all that is stirring in our subconscious. I mean, it's fascinating how rich and deep the subconscious is. All the imagery that is there, all the thoughts and feelings and perceptions that are not in our conscious mind. Through the creative process, say through writing for me, that I begin to see like, oh, this is what I'm feeling. This is what's going on. And I think for the most raw feelings and emotions, it's probably dance for me. Kind of just going out and doing sort of free form dance, like an ecstatic dance or something like that.
Yeah.
Because dance just brings you so into the body.
Yes.
And the body is the place in which all these energies are working themselves out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a saying, as I practice somatic psychotherapy, that the issues are in the tissues. The issues are in the tissues, so that moving through things, that expressing things is a way where we don't have to process it psychologically or intellectually,
Yes.
but just through the body and through the tissues.
Yes.
That being said, meditation and breathing is a very important practice for me for finding that center, for sifting between, what is real and what is false. And that for me is also an art. Like meditation for me is perhaps, as I'm discovering, one of the highest forms of art.
Beautiful. What has been your path with meditation and your relationship to that as an art form over the years? And I'd love to also just to share and to hear more about your lineage and how that influences this relationship to meditation and this relationship to the way in which you sing and those places where your lineage brings context for those as really dear art forms for you.
Well, my first meditation experience was a Vipassana training I was 19 years old, and I was in India, close to Dharamsala, and I was vastly underprepared for it. I was not ready for 10 days of silence. It was a very difficult experience, and it was humbling. It was very humbling. But, there's something that coincided around that time, which I want to share. It's a story that happened where about 3 months prior, I was traveling with my girlfriend, and there's a book I read called Catfish and Mandala, one of my favorite books I've ever read. And so in this book, the author, he rides a bicycle through all of Vietnam on a self-discovery journey, connecting to his roots. So I wanted to do that. So we shipped one of our bags, bought a motorbike,
Wow.
traveled through Vietnam. ended up, she got bit by a monkey. We had to get rabies vaccines, travel through the country, sell the
Wow.
bike. It was quite a journey. We ended up broke by the time we got to Saigon, and I had no money to get out of the country, no money to extend my visa, no money to pay the hotel bill.
Wow.
And I had just started to do some percussion and drumming, and she was a fire dancer. And so we used to perform on the streets. And of course, we're two foreigners in Vietnam. Nobody's expecting to give us money. They think we're just doing it for fun, right? But eventually, there's a guy who used to call me Aladdin, and you can probably guess why. I mean, especially without my beard, I have a bit of an Aladdin thing. So he says, Aladdin, where's your monkey? I said, no, Aladdin needs some help right now. I need you to tell people that we need some money. We're performing here. So this is kind of, we start to perform. The first woman to give us money, she says, this is part of our, this is good luck for you. And we didn't really make much. And then later, I start to dance with these, fire juggling tools, but they weren't on fire. I was just playing with them. And she said, what is that? And I tell her that these are meant to be danced with fire. And her eyes light up. She says, I want to see it. I said, well, I don't even have money for gasoline. She says, don't worry. And she takes it and she brings them back 30 minutes later, soaked in gas. And my partner lights them up and begins to start to dance with them, and the police come. And the police were going to stop us, but all of a sudden, this huge crowd just gathered around so fast. And there were recently police protests in Vietnam. So they saw this big crowd, and they all of a sudden started to shrink back. And I realized, well, I got to support her. So I start to drum, she starts to dance, and we did this huge performance, and hundreds of people gathered around. Everybody was in this, exalted state. And then after we were done, the woman who had sort of fomented this little rebellion, right, in the park, and she was the first one to give us money,
Yeah.
she was so excited by this that she said, don't go anywhere, I'll be back. And so we wait an interminably long amount of time, perhaps an hour or longer.
Wow.
But we had nowhere to go and we didn't have any money. So she shows up and she puts an envelope in my hand. And she said, this is part of our Buddhist belief to help those in need. This is part of our understanding of karma. And so she gives it to me, and I open it, and it was over $100, which for, your average Vietnamese it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And at that time, I'm revealing my age a little bit, but, it was a fair bit of money. It was enough for us to get out of Vietnam through Cambodia. I made my way to Thailand, where my father was. So a few months later, I'm finished this Vipassana retreat, and there were some monks that were there who were also meditating with us. And they were from Vietnam, I discovered. And I told them this story. And he said, oh, that's wonderful. You said that she gave you an envelope with the money. Do you still have it? And I didn't know if I did. So I looked in my little travel pouch, the
Yeah.
ones that you wear, and it was tucked there in the corner. And I showed it to him, and he says, I know this address. And he says, I am the head of my monastery in Saigon. Why don't you give me something for her? And I will deliver it to her personally.
Wow.
I said, that would be amazing, right? So they gave me their address, and they said, we're leaving the next day to go to Delhi. And like an idiot I lost the address. And I was upset with myself. And so I go hiking in the mountain the day after, and I see these robes fluttering in the wind. And I come across the same monks in the mountains. And I got the address again. And I wrote a letter for her, and I put it in a beautiful Indian sandalwood box and delivered it to them, knowing in my heart that she would be receiving a gift returned to her from an Indian that she helped who'd gone to India and met Vietnamese monks. And she'd given it in the context of her Buddhist faith, and the head of this monastery would go and deliver it back to her.
Wow.
And for me, I realized that, wow, this life is a gift. And that when we live in this way of our hands open for the gift to come and to go, then we enter into this deep relationship with this law of synchronicity, that sort of creative energy and reciprocity of life. And for me, that is why art is so special. As artists, we realize that the inspiration that we receive, the song that we receive, the poem that we receive, the core inspiration itself comes in the form of a gift.
Yes.
You can't buy the inspiration.
Yes. Yes.
And yet we then have to labor on behalf of it. We have to practice it. We have to write it. We have to refine it. We have to paint it. We have to draw it. And that labor is our value that we add to it. But the essence of what is passed on is a gift.
Yes.
And that is why human beings love art. Because there's some purity in it. Because everybody, even if they pay for that song, they still, when they hear it, it feels like they just received a gift.
Yes.
When an artist shares that inspiration. And for me, that's spiritual.
Yeah.
That is spiritual. And so that influenced my life and my understanding of art. It's not answering maybe your question on meditation, but that was very influential on me. And I feel like it has really influenced my interest. And this is how I might tie it to meditation, is that how does one become a receptive vessel for that gift to come through, to be able to receive it?
Yeah.
We all know what it is like for an artist to be languishing with no inspiration. And you're
Yeah.
just like, nothing's coming through, right? Nothing's coming through. And in the traditions of the East, they through meditation, through ritual, through prayer, through attuning their body-mind system to become vessels in relationship with the environment, they open themselves to a deep continual flow of inspiration. And I think meditation can be very helpful for an artist in that way. Because the blocks that we experience are the ones in our body and mind where we're all just like this,
Yeah.
right? And unless the signal starts to get clearer and clearer and clearer, it's hard to receive that.
Yes.
The meditation is the art of tuning ourselves so that the signal starts to come in clear.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can so resonate and relate to that, and through my own experience feel that so to be true. And that was the best answer I could have asked for. So thank you. So good to hear your stories. And I'm curious just to touch deeper into that, because I know your dad is in Thailand and you're Indian, and I'd love to hear more about that culture and your lineage and how that's influenced the forms of art that you've been drawn to, and how those are coming through today.
My father's side of the family is Muslim. My mother's side is Sikh. My spiritual teacher is Buddhist, and my core practice of yoga is inspired and stems from the Hindu Dharma. So I am universal. I think I would say my religion is love and awareness and the ways in which that is accessed and expressed. So I don't identify strongly with one religion or lineage over another.
Yeah.
But Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who's the founder of Sikhism, said, truth is high. Higher still is truthful living. However that is.
Beautiful.
And Guru Nanak and Guru Nanak's teachings, Guru Arjan Dev Ji, deeply impressed upon my heart, because Sikhism, Guru Nanak sung his way to God. He sung his way to God. Every single prayer in the Sikh holy text is a song. It's all set to raga music. So that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
That the entire religion is based in song.
Yeah.
Of opening ourselves to the awe and mystery and wonder of life. Even the Sikh name for God is Vaheguru. Vaheguru. And what is Va?
Wonder.
Wonder.
Wow.
Wow. Right? That experience of awe and wonder with life.
Yeah.
And that is impressed upon us by the vision of the majesty of creation, of the wonderment of the constellation of the self, you might say, in the higher sort of sense of the word. And so Vaheguru is that, and Guru is the teacher, but also it means the one who removes obstacles, who removes ignorance and illusion. Right? So I feel that I would say in terms of the spiritual art of my lineage would be Kirtan and Japa, which is in training the mind through sound to come into the resonance of unity through sonic remembrance of God, through these names, through these sounds that bring us into a deeper connection with the spiritual energies of life. A mantra is a mystical energy encased in sound. And so it's a beautiful way where sort of spirituality and science and art kind of come together in sound and music and mantra. And kirtan is just, we've sang kirtan together. It's something my family deeply relishes, enjoys, and it's a form of communion. And when that form of communion is through sound, is through song, it uplifts everybody's spirits. So I feel that has been a gift of my lineage, to realize that through communion, through art, through creativity, those vibrations can uplift us, our heart and mind, uplift us spiritually. And art has that power to do that, especially when practiced together.
That, and I so, like, my favorite aspect of kirtan is that it's a communal, shared space, and that, like, the traditional role of an artist in our culture, Western culture these days, the ways that we see musicians performing is they're on a stage and they're separate from the audience, who is the community, and the audience and the community are just receiving the artist who is on stage. Whereas kirtan is that reciprocal, communal spirit of the gift, where everybody is participating in this prayer to life together. And it's so poignant to be in a space where everybody is giving fully their breath, their sound, their heart, their presence to this central kind of flame of love. And yeah, so thank you so much for touching on the roots of that and where that comes from. And
On that note, I think that there is this, when we go to the root, there's a book, and I want to give the source because what I'm saying might be a bit contentious. People might, some fact checkers out there. There's a lot of fact checkers now. It's sort of grown in popularity. So the book is called The Death and Resurrection Show. It's out of print, but I discovered it through my clowning teacher. At one point in time, I did a clowning training, and I was sort of a circus person.
you ran away with the circus.
Yeah, in a previous life, you might say. And so in this book, he traces the roots of performance and showmanship. And he says that the word showman is rooted in the word shaman. And that the shaman is actually the original artist, the original performer, which is the one that brings us into these ecstatic states, these altered states, or opens us up to the vaster invisible energies of life to be brought into the here and now and experienced collectively. And we know that's what a shaman does. When people sit in ceremonies, through the song, through the dance, through the breath, through the movement, it's bringing that down and bringing the whole group into it. And they're individuals who become the access point
This
and
bridge.
vessel for that.
Yeah.
And that is what the artist is. When you go to see Michael Jackson perform, or you go to see, whether it's Britney Spears, or you go to see whoever it is, why are people being drawn in droves to the stage and to the performers? Because the showman is, in a way, the modern shaman. It's the light and the sound and the energy and the dance that is trying to elevate people into this experience, this collective experience that is bringing us out of the mundane and trying to touch something of the deeper.
Yeah.
But what happened is very interesting, because part of this is traced back to the development of civilization, this conundrum that you're speaking of the separation, this fourth wall between the performer and the audience, right? Which it didn't used to be that way. It used to be in the circle, because the shaman was part of the village.
Yeah.
Although he would be outside somewhat, but still part of it, and always in relationship to the stories and energies of the people and nature and their environment. And it was a collective experience where that fourth wall wasn't there.
Yeah.
But we were used to be nomadic peoples and travel around that way in small groups. When we became settled, these nomadic shamans would go into small towns or even cities, and people were no longer part of that nomadic life where they were organically connected to the rhythms of life and nature, sharing the same level of culture.
Right.
And so the shaman actually started to perform. where they became witnesses or spectators of someone else accessing this state and them sort of getting a taste or access of it through them.
Right.
Rather than actually fully participating in it. And he said that's where the showman, the performer, started to grow. Now, can I verify this? I don't know, but it's a fascinating concept that the shamanic artist became a performer because people stopped living in the way of life that required them to be in a deep participatory embrace with the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that gradual disconnection enforced the separation of the artist from the people and increased the distance of the performer and the audience.
Yeah.
And it became more about the outer display of a thing rather than the inner experience that people are invited into.
Yes.
About the costumes and this and that and all those things. Not that they weren't always there.
Yeah.
Right? The shamans, the colors and the feathers and all kinds of things. So something to consider.
Thank you so much. So I'm curious, bearing in mind all that which you've spoken to of this divide between the shaman, the showman, the one who has this potential to either be a bridge and an invitation for collective participation and communion with life through art, or as somebody who is more just like an image of that connection that people can watch and look at and find enjoyment from, but not be invited to participate with. I'm curious, your path as an artist, like what is your highest vision of sharing your work in whatever form you might dream into it being, in a way that might be participatory or used as an invitation for greater connection and coherence? And I'm curious where you would take that going forward in your life.
I think what's happening now for me artistically is I'm leaning more and more into storytelling. I think one of the oldest forms of art is the oral tale. And human beings are storytelling creatures. We are meaning-making creatures, and we use story to make sense of ourselves and to make sense of the world. So I find that storytelling, the oral tale, is intrinsically a very participatory art. When you sit in circle or around with a storyteller, you can feel the sense of involvement and participation in the tale.
Yeah.
So I'm being much more drawn into storytelling. I've loved it for many years, but I'm appreciating it more. And I do think, connecting to your earlier introduction around social change and activism, that storytelling is very, very important for that. I think artists have a very important role in this because artists are storytellers, whether it's through song or whether it's through art. And for them to be connected to the realities of life now and finding through image and through music, through metaphor, to bring people into relationship with the things that we feel and intuit and know, but don't have the language or imagery to convey.
Yeah.
Right? An artist needs to be the one to do that, right? Because they have a foot in two worlds. Right? And so Yuval Noah Harari in *Sapiens* talks about what separated us from, Neanderthals. What allowed Homo sapiens to thrive? Why are we here? Why did evolution have us here? And he said it's because of our capacity for cooperation, which goes against this notion of the Darwinian notion of survival of the fittest and natural selection. Not that it isn't there. You study nature, it is, but it's not the whole story.
Yeah.
And in fact, for us, our strength as a species lies not in competition, but in cooperation. And what is it that facilitated and enabled human cooperation? Shared story. A story can bind 100, 200, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 people. A nation itself is a story and an identity.
Yeah.
So storytelling, I think, is one of the most important gifts and skills humans have to either invoke cooperation or division. So I feel storytelling for me is the leaning edge of where my art is going. And how do I understand and master it better to be in service to the more beautiful world that my heart knows is possible?
Yes. Beautiful. Well, would you like to share some stories with us?
Sure. Yeah. This is a story that is about, I think, the artist's journey in many ways,
Mm.
about the journey of improvisation in life and in art. And it's a Chinese tale. And it goes like this. Once upon a time, in a small village in rural China, they were visited by a master flute player from the city. They were very excited for this, being a small village. They're not used to a flute player of this mastery to come through their little hamlet. And so he came and they had their hall. And he stepped on stage. Everyone in the village was gathered. Silence descended. And then the first note was played. And from that first note, their hearts were captured. And it was as if all the mountains and fields, the stars, and the river played through him. They were elevated into a place where they were just gripping moment by moment onto each note. He took them on such a journey. And by the time it was done and silence descended again, the elder of the village stood up and he began to clap, saying, "Like a god." And so, having been so moved by this performance, the elders in the village gathered and they decided they wanted to send one of their youngers to go apprentice from this flute player so that he would be able to provide this kind of experience for them. And so they chose the most promising musical young lad and they sent him to go study with this master. So he would go, and in the beginning, he learned a simple scale, and he would practice it, and he would play it for his master, and the master would say, "Something lacking," and give him more scales to play. And he would play, and he would practice for hours and hours again, all the notes, all the combinations, until his fingers were red and raw, his lips were chapped, and he would come and share it with his master. And the master would look at him. Something lacking. And again, more songs and more scales and more exercises he would take on. And he poured himself over the mastery of all the intricacies of this flute, technically mastering everything, running them up and down late into the night. He would tie a string to his head up into the ceiling just so that he wouldn't fall asleep, so that he could stay up and continue playing. Like this, he played with dedication and devotion, and he would come to his master, and again he would play. His master would listen and say, "Something lacking." After hearing this for so many years, his spirit was crushed. And in his abject hopelessness from being what he viewed as a failure, he stole away into the night with his flutes, not even saying goodbye to his master. And he turned to drink, and he began to wander through the towns and the countryside, sleeping under bridges, playing a little bit here and there just for enough money for him to be able to continue on his vagaries as he traveled. Eventually, he ended up in some small little village with a little hut outside, and the villagers used to send their children to him to take lessons. He'd been reduced to just teaching village children flute, just enough to make money, but he sank in the stupor of his drink. And somehow, the people of his old village heard news of a flute player who was apparently very excellent, but had just been hiding away in a small hut teaching flute to children because they had wondered what happened to him. He never returned. They never heard word for him. And so they sent a little emissary out to see, and lo and behold, it was him there. And so they said, "Well, you have to come back to us, to the village." He says, "No, no, no, I could never come back. I'm done with this." And they go back to the village, and they decided that they were going to host a concert for him to come and perform, and that thick or thin, that they would get him there. And so they came, and they insisted that if he didn't come, they would beat him black and blue, and that he had to return. And in his drunken stupor, some part of him just said, fine with it. And he grabbed the first flute from his little flute bag, and he left and went to the village. He goes to the village, and he stumbles up onto the stage of the hall in which the first master had first performed. He steps on, and as he stands and looks out, he's completely empty. All his memory of failure leaves him. No fear or expectation of how he is to be received. Completely still and silent inside. He picks up his flute and realizes that this was the flute that his village had gifted him to go study with his master. He closes his eyes and he begins to play. And as he plays that first note, their hearts are enchanted by the simplicity and magic of this tune. And it's as if the fields and the rivers and the clouds and mountains all began to play through him. And as the sound circulated the room, they hung each breath upon every note. And by the time he was done and silence descended upon the room once again, the elder of the village stood up and began to clap his hands and said these words, like a god.
Wow. The journey we go on.
It's very much the journey, I think, when we seek to perfect ourselves or better ourselves at a craft, that we submit ourselves to the rigor of learning a thing. And in that process, we can forget the spirit of the thing that drew us to learn it in the first place. When the master said something was lacking, he didn't mean that something was lacking in his technical skill. What was lacking was the spirit of that breath, the spirit that flowed through him, where he was no longer there. He was the one doing all the things, trying to show off, trying to effort and display these things. And the master says, no, something is lacking. And so he had to go on that journey of feeling that he's a failure and going through all the despair and the emotions to abandon his craft entirely until he comes back, and all of a sudden all that leaves him, and all there is just this moment and this flute and his openness to the now and being an instrument for his instrument. And then the gods play through him. Right?
It reminds me of this quote a friend of mine shared. I don't even know where it comes from, but all fear is the fear of feeling, she said. And in that story, it reminds me of like this resistance that at least I can relate to, of being a performer, where I'm afraid of making mistakes, where I'm afraid of feeling like a failure, where I'm afraid of kind of stepping off this cliff edge of where there's success and there's accomplishment, to where there's failure and like devastation and heartbreak, and I'm not what I want to be or what I thought I was. And he kind of, because he went so fully into the depths of that feeling of letting go of his highest dream and of his ego in a sense, that coming back to that space of playing, there was no more fear of failure, because he had met that so fully that he could just play from his heart without this kind of glass floor beneath him.
Absolutely, you got it. You got it. We all know what it's like to step in. We step in front of our teacher, and all of a sudden we forget everything and we clumse everything up because we're worried about how we're being perceived and what we haven't done. We haven't done it enough, right? And performers all know what it's like to have performance anxiety, right? You practice something, you step on the stage, and all of a sudden yourself comes in. And you're looking at your own fears. You're looking at yourself. You're looking at your inconsistencies, and you're looking at your marks of ugliness or failure. All those things are there, right?
Yeah.
And so much of the work is actually moving past that and moving beyond that. So in that sense, there's a whole psychological emotional maturation in that journey of artistry.
Yes.
That's not just technical, right?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, you see in the modern day how many artists are canceling their tours and their shows now more than ever before for mental health reasons.
Yeah.
Right? The amount of pressure that people are feeling on artists largely because of social media, and everything is commented upon, and everything is everything is criticized, and everything is analyzed. It can crush the spirit of an artist, right? And it kind of can take us out of the innocence of what drew us into the art in the first place.
That essence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Do you have more stories for us?
How about a poem?
A poem would be so lovely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. We have time for two, maybe?
Definitely.
So I printed a few here. There's one that's very very precious to me. But let's start with this one. It's called Love's Victory. It's a shorter one. There is a space within that fills everything it touches with a quiet presence opening the gates to wonder. There is a precious jewel woven into your soul's coat that produces effortless abundance from the most common things, like a smile, a flower, or a song. There is an unstruck melody reverberating in the spaces between sounds, a silent tune only the heart can hear. When the sky fills with color at dusk, and the birds sing farewell to the sun, the earth hovers between day and night as a lover awaits a response from one's beloved. The truth is near in those moments when love's victory is certain, and we relish the countless confirmations that there could be no other way.
Beautiful. Thank you.
This is a short one that is about the importance of paying attention. I think paying attention is essential to be a good artist. You need to pay attention to life. You need to pay attention to things, because your first instrument is your perception.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit about that. It's called Pay Attention. From the wrist to the thumb, a ridge, creases mark slopes sung by time. Every part of you tells a story, only the whole remains unknown. From heel to toe, a leafed curve points skywards, the soul or soul, I know not, which connects me to the earth. It's all flowing when time stands still. Flowers speak, as do grasses. The breeze is subtle, so is silence. If you're not paying attention, you'll miss its message and its coolness. We got to be here to catch it when it comes, you know? We got to be here when it comes.
Yeah.
How many times are things coming? We're just not here
Yeah.
to receive it, you know?
Fully feeling and fully in the body.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I felt this, you know, I'd love to do some more training work and stuff with artists, so that we can deepen our presence, deepen our attention. You know, I learn from artists all the time. You know, I am like, what would it be like to smell and taste like a chef, and to hear like a musician, and to see like a painter or a photographer, and to move and feel like a dancer, right? You know, all these artists just have deepened their perception.
Yeah.
That's what it is,
Yeah.
right?
And in these very specific ways.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, then you begin, you know, the artist of life, right? The artist of life. So maybe the last poem here.
Yeah.
But here we go. Oh, it's 2 pages though, so here we go. This poem is called The Gift. What does it mean to give when all is already thine? It means to let go of the sense of me and mine. When the circle turns in upon itself, the spiral begins to form. Moving with self-fulfilled momentum, the germ of life is suddenly born. There is no sense in holding to what is no longer ours. To know when to give away is the source of the sage's powers. His blessings are manifold. They resound in a myriad of chords. We lose the sense of symphony when out of fear we begin to hoard. Let each of our possessions be a note in the music sheet of time. When life chooses to call them, offer as a word does to a poet's rhyme. In this way our hands remain open for many gifts to come and go. We live our life in sweet surrender and with the river flow. Some say this is impractical, others that it cannot be done, but nothing is impossible for a soul with faith in the one. So shed your reins of possession, let your shackles fall to the floor. This obsession with recompense will plague you nevermore. Release, release, and release again. Let peace return to your heart. Though the journey be 1,000 miles, it begins not before you start. Surrender this life of yours in joyful service to the whole. Let the waters of contentment flow to the one who sees diamonds in the coals. Each path of life is a test, for whom truth is a treasure sought. The angels speak in many tongues to one, for whom love inspires every thought. Though they may be criticized, blasphemed, and deplored, the inner eye of those who see know by God they are adored. So shed your reins of possession. What you hold grips you even more, and allow the spirit of the gift to guide you to freedom's shore.
So good.
Thank
you. Such a gift.
It is. This life is a gift, and what you give back to it is your gift back to life. So what a privilege to be an artist.
Yeah,
Right?
truly.
You know, we've been
Truly.
blessed with the capacity to receive the gift and labor on its behalf and give it in return.
Yeah.
And I think that art, the more that we appreciate art, that humanity comes to appreciate art, and I would say beauty, then we will live closer to the truth. This truth is beautiful. And we're here, I think, our path now is the beauty way. You know, how do we create beauty? What is truly beautiful?
Yeah.
Let's labor on behalf of beauty.
Yeah.
Leave the religions to themselves. But we lovers of beauty,
Yeah.
feel that in the heart. Be sensitive to it. Labor on its behalf. And we shall be vessels for that gift and create. And this life will feel like it is beautiful and giftful. Yeah.
Each in our own way.
Yeah, each in our own way, right? Because we're all artists. We all have been given the same seed, the spark of the creator, as my grandfather would say.
And these brilliant bodies with which to feel life move
Yes,
through us.
yes.
Yeah.
Let us be artists of life.
Well, I'll leave you with that today. Is there any last offerings or gifts or projects that feel inspiring to you at this time that you want to share for people to find you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've created, as a yoga educator, just one of my primary works now, is I created a tool called the Inner Path Deck, and that was a beautiful labor of love. I worked with an artist in Portugal, very, very talented, Shio Jean, and together, and also another friend, Paula Vega, and we created a tarot for people to learn the 8 limbs of yoga and philosophy of yoga, but with art that kind of tells the story.
Gorgeous
So
art.
we're working on that now. If they go to my website, themysticyogi.com, they can, learn about that. But now we're looking at creating more of a digital art world with a storyline connected
Wow.
to this sort of emerging idea of the metaverse called Shambhala, with a story that is very much emerging for this time. So I'm very excited about that project. So, but
Yeah.
if they go to the website, they can come into contact with the art, or it's on Instagram. And, if you like yoga and you want to learn about it in a beautiful way, so we can make yogic learning beautiful, then that's a nice access point for people there.
Amazing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
people can learn about me, and I'll be doing a tour with storytelling and music and mantra connected to taking people through the land of yoga, where these worlds that I'm talking about here intersect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I will link all of those in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
sharing
Safiya,
all
for
of your
evoking
gifts.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us today. I hope the words, the poetry, the stories inspire you to wander and to go on your journey and to be able to let go of everything that you might think you understand about the way in which to perform or create, or these pressures and expectations that we can put on ourselves when we seek to express ourselves creatively and find the authentic flow of deep connection that can allow what comes through you to be a gift to this world, to trust so deeply in yourself and in life that that flow becomes effortless, and to keep showing up to this dance with the beauty that you hold within you and that we are so ready to receive in whatever form that might be. So thank you again. And I hope this ripples out into your world, and I hope you bring it into whatever forms of expression you are seeking to cultivate. For next week, we will be interviewing and sitting with many more artists and musicians, and I'm so looking forward to being with them. So thank you and stay tuned. See you next time.